Heart to Heart Catholic Media Ministry, in partnership with Bellarmine Jesuit Retreat House, presents A Retreat with St. Peter, Growing from Sinner to Saint, preached by Father J. Michael Sparough, S.J. I'm Dev Kennedy, your host for this audio retreat. This series includes 6 retreat talks, each divided into 2 parts for easier listening. These recordings are drawn from retreats Father Michael preached at Bellarmine Jesuit Retreat House in Barrington, Illinois in 2025 and 2026. Before we begin, let me tell you a little about Father Michael. Father J. Michael Sparough, S.J., is a retreat leader, poet, storyteller, and spiritual director at Bellarmine Jesuit Retreat House. He holds an MFA from the Yale School of Drama and a Doctor of Ministry from the University of St. Mary of the Lake in Mundelein, Illinois. He founded Charis, a national Jesuit retreat ministry for young adults in their 20s and 30s, and spent 10 years training spiritual directors at Loyola University, Chicago. A prolific writer and speaker, Father Michael has published books, poems, audio recordings, and videos on prayer, discernment, and the sacraments with America Media, Franciscan Media, Paulist Press, Liturgical Training Publications, Audible, Loyola Press, and Heart to Heart. He is co-author of What's Your Decision? An Ignatian Approach to Decision-Making. Father Michael also serves as president of Heart to Heart Catholic Media Ministry. His weekly video homilies are available at htoh.us. He recently wrote and directed the award-winning 12-part video series Discern and Decide, Navigating Life's Choices, an Ignatian video guide, accompanied by a companion study guide. Now, let's begin part 1 of Father Michael's first presentation, The Call. For what are you fishing?
All of the retreats here at Bellarmine are somehow based on the spiritual exercises. For those of you that are new, just a little bit on St. Ignatius and how that ties into St. Peter. So St. Ignatius lived about 500 years ago. He lived from 1491 to 1556. He was a Spaniard at a time when Spain was the superpower of the world. He came from a landed, wealthy family. His mother died when he was very young. His father apprenticed him to the Lord Treasurer and wrote in his autobiography that up to the age of 26, he excelled in 3 things: womanizing, gambling, and dueling. Those were his 3 big claims to fame. And he came from a military family. His older brothers were sea captains and they traveled over to the Americas. And he was the youngest of a dozen kids. And so he wanted to earn glory and fame for himself. So he joined the military and he had a commission. He was defending a fort at Pamplona, which is right near the border of Spain and France. The Spaniards were horribly outnumbered, and anybody with an ounce of military logic would negotiate a truce, but not when you're the youngest and you have to prove that your sword is sharper than everybody else's. And they held off the French until a cannonball came over the rampart and broke both of his legs. End of battle. The Spanish surrendered, but the French were so impressed with his machismo and his spirit, his chivalry, that the French carried him back to his castle at Loyola to recuperate. They set his leg rather badly on the field, and as he began to recover, he looked down, and there was 2 problems. One, the bone had, through the jostling and everything else, the bone was sticking out, and one leg was longer than the other. Ignatius said, saw off the bone, re-break the leg, reset it. And of course, this is without any benefit of anesthesia. It wasn't the wound itself, it was the fact that they sawed off the bone and they re-broke his leg, that he came at death's door. A priest was called in. He said, you better make your last confession. We don't think you're going to last the night. It was on that night that St. Peter He had a mystical vision, the first of many throughout his life, and St. Peter appeared to Ignatius. That had a profound impact on his life, and he would have a great devotion to St. Peter for the rest of his life, and in service to the Pope for the rest of his life, the heirs to Peter. I mentioned that story at the beginning because we're going to be reflecting on St. Peter, and I'll give 6 different talks in the course of the retreat, picking 6 different gospel scenes in the life of St. Peter that are significant moments, really defining moments in his life and in his ministry. And I'd encourage you to take some time to reflect on the journal questions. Here for the first talk is, name a time when you, like Peter, your best efforts fell short. Did you pray? How did it play out? Where was Jesus for you? So all 6 talks have different reflection questions, and I'd invite you to do a little bit of journaling, not just to think about it, but to write it down on the page. St. Ignatius, I like to say, was the unofficial patron saint of journaling. He found it very helpful to write down his reflections. And in fact, he liked to write down the scripture, and he would use different colored pens to make the words of Christ stand out from the gospel text. His writing down the gospel text was a way of bringing it into himself. He became, after his conversion, an intense prayer, and he would reflect on his prayer and then write it down. And then a week later or a month later or a year later, he'd go back to his journals and he'd look at what he had written and what the spiritual movements were. So I'd encourage you to take a page from St. Ignatius and not just think about the insights that the Lord is gifting you with, but put some things on paper. It's a way of deepening it and owning it. Well, meanwhile, back at St. Ignatius, he has this mystical experience. St. Peter appears to him, and Mother Mary, holding the child Christ, appears to him. He was instantaneously healed of his lust. Any of you that have had an experience with addiction, and I think it's pretty safe to say that Ignatius was a sex addict early on in his life. Some of you I know who have gone through 12-step programs have had incredible experiences where God took away the compulsion to drink or to do drugs or to gamble. I was with a guy just last week, and he made a retreat here at Bellarmine. He was an incredible alcoholic for many years. And on one of the retreats here at Bellarmine, he asked the Lord to take away the desire to drink, and he hasn't had a drop of alcohol since. He was instantaneously healed. That was the experience of Ignatius. You know, he was abusive in his sexuality, and through this mystical vision, St. Peter, the Blessed Mother, Jesus appearing to him, he lost that desire for promiscuity and dedicated himself to the chaste life. Gradually, over the course of those 9 months, he reconfigured his life from serving an earthly king to the heavenly king, for trying to win honor and power and fame and glory for himself to serving Christ the King. In the course of the 9 months of convalescence, as I said, Ignatius began to reflect on his life, what his values were, what he wanted to do with his life. There was a similar instantaneous moment of conversion in St. Peter's life as well. And it's documented in St. Luke's Gospel, chapter 5, verses 1 through 11. When the crowd was pressing in on Jesus and listening to the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret. He saw 2 boats there alongside the lake. The fishermen had disembarked and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, he asked him to put out a short distance from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. After he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep and lower your nets for a catch." Simon said in reply, "Master, we've worked hard all night and have caught nothing. But at your command, I will lower the nets." When they had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their nets were tearing. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come to help them. They came and filled both boats so that they were in danger of sinking. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at the knees of Jesus and said, "Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For astonishment at the catch of fish they had made seized him and all those with him, and likewise James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners of Simon. Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men." When they brought their boats to the shore, they left everything and followed him. St. Ignatius would later reflect in a little book that he wrote of prayer experiences. He calls them spiritual exercises. And the analogy is this, that just as we need physical exercise to get in shape, so we need spiritual exercises to get in shape spiritually. In the spiritual exercises, St. Ignatius says that there's 3 different ways of making a decision, 3 primary methodologies that he would recommend. And the first one is really that the decision is made for you. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to struggle. You just know what you know, what you know. That's the experience that St. Peter had after that miraculous catch of fish. He didn't have to spend the next couple weeks thinking about, that was pretty amazing. I've never caught so many fish in my life. Maybe this guy is somebody that, no, he, boom, leaves everything and follows the Lord. That's that first experience of making a decision. You know what you know, what you know. And sometimes, perhaps you've had those experiences in your life, Some authors would say that that's pretty rare, but I beg to differ. I think it happens more often than not. It happened to my niece. She was at the University of Cincinnati. She graduated from the architecture school there. She was a model when she was younger, very attractive and bright, and she dated one loser after another. She would bring all these airheads home. They would just say, what attractive, but nothing going on. And she couldn't find anybody that was a good fit. Well, she graduated and she's working for an architecture firm. And the firm sponsors an organization or a camp where the architects met and worked with stonemasons and other craftsmen for several days to learn what kind of materials work well in the buildings, hands-on experience. Here she is. She's got this advanced degree in architecture, and she meets this blue-collar worker, stonemason, bang. She falls head over heels, instantly in love. The sparks fly. She comes home after the first date, wakes up my sister in the middle of the night and says, "Mom, I just met the man I'm going to marry." And my sister says, "Honey, that's nice. Why don't you let me go back to sleep?" And she said, "No, I'm serious. I just met the man I'm going to marry." A year later, I celebrated their wedding, and that was over 20 years ago, and they're still happily married. That's the experience of St. Ignatius when he has this mystical experience. It's the experience of St. Peter when he catches more fish than he's ever caught in his entire life. It rocks him to the core. Now, let's just tease out this story a little bit and reflect on it in some detail here. So St. Luke records that Peter had been fishing all night long. Those of you that fish know that in the middle of the day, the fish go deep with the sun beating down on the water, but at night they come closer to the surface. And so, especially in Galilee, at the Sea of Galilee, the fishermen go out at night because it's then their nets can scoop up the fish. And Peter's a professional fisherman. He knows all the spots in the lake to catch the fish. If there are any fish to be caught on a particular day, he knows where and how to catch them. But on this particular night, for whatever reason, they're working hard all night long, and they caught zilch, zippo, nothing. He comes back, and just picture yourself for a moment. You're a professional fisherman. Your brother, Andrew, is a follower of priests and prophets. He's been following John the Baptist, and now he's kind of enamored of this new preacher, teacher, wonder worker. And he's told you about him. And you're a little interested, but you're a businessman. You're a hard worker. You're not one of those holy roller types like your brother. So he's listening to Jesus patiently kind of wax on to tell his little story. And then Jesus surprises him and says, let's go out fishing. And Jesus is a preacher and he's a carpenter. And he grew up in Nazareth, and there's no lakes around Nazareth. Can you just imagine somebody coming up to you from a totally different profession and telling you how to do your job? How would you feel about that? You might not welcome that suggestion. It's like, thanks, but no thanks. What was it about the way that Jesus asked the question, the look in his eyes, the expression on his face? Perhaps Peter just thought, well, this would be a nice opportunity to be able to show up this upstart. If there are any fish to be caught, I would have caught them. Okay. But maybe he was just saying, okay, we'll humor them. For whatever reason, they go out into the lake. And as St. Luke records it, he catches more fish than he's ever caught in his entire life. He catches so many fish that their nets are to the point of breaking. And the boats are in danger of sinking. That's a lot of fish. They pull it to shore, and notice Peter's reaction. He knew he didn't do this. He didn't catch those fish. Those were a gift from God. And his reaction to that is what? Go away from me. I'm not one of those holy types. My brother, yeah, he's a follower of John the Baptist. He knows all the prayers. He knows his catechism. He's been going to daily synagogue. He knows the scriptures back. That's my brother, but that's not me. Okay? I like to belt a few down. When I lose my temper, I swear like a sailor. His reaction is, Jesus, you don't want to be associated with me. I'm not one of those holy types. But that's the moment of vulnerability, and it's the moment of openness. And can you just picture the smile on Jesus' face, the penetrating gaze, and place yourself in Peter's shoes at that moment? That's the reflection question I'm asking you to think about. When's a time in your life when your best efforts fell short, when you flopped, when you had some great business plan and it was all going to succeed and you fell flat on your face? That's Peter's experience. And Jesus doesn't walk away. He said, now I can work with you. Because you know it's not you, but God's grace working through you. You were the one who let down the nets. You were the one who pulled the fish in. You were the one who brought them to shore. But you didn't put the fish in the nets. That was God's grace. That's the experience of being discipled by Christ, of God working in us and through us. But there's great humility in that. Peter Kreeft contemporary philosopher, theologian, has said, only sinners think they're saints, but the saints know they're sinners. I think that's so true. Only the sinners think they're saints, but the saints know themselves to be sinners. That is to say, the further you get away from God, the less aware we are of our own shortcomings. And the less aware we become of our own shortcomings, what do? We start becoming very aware of the shortcomings in everyone else. Our business associates, politicians in Washington, your spouse, your kids, your neighbors, they're all losers, or I got to help them, the poor slobs that they are, because I got it together. The closer we come to Christ, the more we recognize our own brokenness and that we're all in this together.
This concludes part 1 of Father Michael's first retreat presentation, The Call. For what are you fishing? We'll continue with part 2 in the next section of the retreat. We'll close this session with a few quiet moments for reflection, accompanied by an excerpt from the song Willing by Michael John Poyer from his album, Hello, Lord. As you listen, consider these questions. How willing are you to listen, really listen, to the Lord's call in your life? What might be holding you back from surrendering more deeply?
Lord, help me to be willing to be changed by you. Lord, help me to be willing to be changed by you. Only you can see my heart, and you know that I'm afraid to hear the plans you have for me. Help me today. Let me know your strength, O Lord, for I am powerless alone. Holy Spirit, flow through me on my way home. Lord, help me to be willing to be changed.